Hi, it's Katrina. Hold on to your hats, folks, because the world is changing faster than we can keep up. Every day, new discoveries are rewriting history, challenging our beliefs, and pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. From creepy skulls in an Egyptian temple to more than 300 new Nazca lines, these discoveries will leave you wondering what other secrets are still out there waiting to be uncovered. Let's go check it out. The stargates used by aliens. Deep within the heart of Sri Lanka, a hidden stone carving has baffled experts for centuries. Could it be the key to an ancient stargate? The mystery remains unsolved to this day, but maybe together we can get to the bottom of it. Let's investigate, starting with what we know. The stargate in question is located in the sacred city of Anuradhapura. The sacred city these days is home to a staggering number of UFO sightings and many reports of otherworldly activity. In ancient times, it was known as Rajarata in the local language, which translates into English as Land of the Kings. The area was established as the heart of Buddhist culture on the island of Sri Lanka around 377 BC and has been attracting Buddhist pilgrims for more than 2,000 years. This city predates the Vatican, and just like the Vatican, Anuradhapura is home to secrets and legends. In one part of the holy city is a small park. It looks like the kind of park you'd find in any city. It's about 40 acres of trees and manicured walkways with curious old stones protected by rusting iron gates. There are also a couple of Buddhist temples. Behind one of the rusting iron gates is a large stone block, inscribed with what many believe to be a portal to another dimension. It's a carving that has puzzled historians and archaeologists ever since they started studying it a century ago. It's called the Sakwala Chakraya, or the universe cycle in English. There is even an excellent viewing spot for gazing up at the portal. There are 4 seats sculpted into a flat rock just across from it. Somebody carved the symbols in the stone and then carved the seat so people could stare at it. Or maybe so people could travel through it. Maybe the seats were built so people could get comfortable before the portal activated and sucked them through to another dimension. I mean, probably not, but it's fun, right? The mystery behind the carving is that no one knows what it is. It's unclear if the carving is a cosmological chart, something meant to map the stars, or if it's more magical than that. Professor Raj Somadeva said the chart may have been a later installation inside the holy city. Someone may have carved it during the 7th century AD, when new buildings were added to the garden. The professor said it's impossible to know because its existence isn't mentioned in any of the historical records, which is highly unusual because the Buddhist monks were meticulous about their records. They recorded everything, yet nowhere is a single mention of the mysterious chart. In the center of the Stargate's carving is a very strange symbol made of 7 concentric circles. The circles are cut in half by vertical and horizontal lines, sort of like a crosshair in the center of some ripples. Surrounding the central symbol are others that look like umbrellas, kites, cylinders, strange wavy lines. Then the outer ring is full of bizarre marine animals like fish and seahorses. You might want to chalk up the symbols to religious iconography, but nothing about the chart is particularly religious. Normally, with a chart like this, if it was trying to be religious, it would depict things related to Buddhism, like swans, lotus flowers, or vines. It's another layer to the mystery because not only is the Stargate out of place, but its symbols don't make any sense to historians. At least, not all historians. In 1911, archaeologist H.C.P. Bell concluded in his report that these symbols map the world. He believed it to be the oldest map in existence. He interpreted the circles and images of marine life as a great Buddhist scholar mapping out the world using symbols known to him. There are other intriguing ideas involving Anuradhapura Stargate. Some keen-eyed observers have noted how the symbols on Sakwala Chakraya are similar to symbols found in places like Egypt and Peru. Not just in Egypt and Peru at random sites either. The symbols in Sri Lanka are similar to symbols found at other sites that are also believed to be stargates. Abu Ghurab, for one. The ancient Egyptian ruin is believed to have drawn visitors from other planets through hyper-advanced portals. Another place with the same symbols is La Puerta de Ayumarca in Peru. The theory right now is that these three places had portals because they were built by extraterrestrials. The aliens needed easy access to certain parts of the world thousands of years ago. Why? Because the alien beings were processing gold on our planet. They harvested the gold and brought it back through stargates to their world, which humans were not allowed. But that's, of course, just a crazy theory. A theory that scientists won't touch with a 40-foot pole. But how else do you explain the similarities at alleged stargate sites across the globe? The theory of an extraterrestrial connection has been further fueled by the proximity of the stargate to Danigala Mountain, also known as Alien Mountain, in the nearby sacred city of Polonnaruwa. Danigala, a mysterious circular peak with a perfectly flat summit deep in the jungle, has long captivated hikers and internet sleuths alike. Many believe it to be a former UFO landing site. Curiously, according to a local tour guide, villagers report an unusually high frequency of shooting stars, thunder, and lightning above the mountain. It seems to be a place where the gods like to hang out. The Minotaur's labyrinth finally found? On the shores of Crete lies a dark secret waiting to be unearthed. Archaeologists have found a palace from 4,000 years ago. The palace's walls are arranged like a maze, leading many to speculate that it was used by the ancient Minoans for some creepy rituals. Archaeologists found is a ruin, a conglomeration of broken stone walls on top of a hill. The hilltop overlooks Castelli, giving breathtaking views of the area. It would have been the perfect place to perform ceremonies. Although archaeologists are calling it a palace, the structure was more like an open-air maze or a dizzying stone circle. The structure consists of 8 stone rings, each wall roughly about shoulder height. The stone walls intersect to form little chambers, just like a hedge maze. The whole thing is very strange, fitting for Crete since the island is the ancient home of the Minotaur. The Minotaur was a legendary creature, half human and half bull, that lived in the labyrinth on the island of Crete. According to Greek mythology, the Minotaur was the offspring of King Minos' wife, Pasiphae, and a bull sent by the god Poseidon. To hide the monstrous birth, King Minos had the architect Daedalus build a complex labyrinth to house the creature. Every 9 years, Athens had to send 7 young men and 7 young women as tribute to the Minotaur, who would then eat them. The hero Theseus, determined to end the sacrifice, volunteered to go to Crete and slay the Minotaur. With the help of Ariadne, King Minos' daughter, who gave him a thread to find his way out of the labyrinth, Theseus successfully killed the Minotaur and escaped back to Crete. Could this be the labyrinth from legend? The mystery labyrinth was uncovered by accident when construction workers were installing a surveillance radar system for a new airport, southeast of the capital, Heraklion. Archaeologists have identified a central circular building at the very core of the so-called palace. It's about 49 feet in diameter. The intersecting walls of the maze radiate out from the circular building. To reach this central chamber and perform whatever ritual was being held inside, you had to move through the maze. The structure dates to the peak of Minoan civilization. As you may know already, this seafaring culture emerged in Greece around 3000 BC. They formed one of the first complex civilizations not only in Europe, but in the world. Some of their myths do live on, like the myth of the Minotaur in the labyrinth, but a large bulk of their history is completely unknown. The biggest issue when trying to learn more about the Minoans is that their language has never been deciphered. They left a written record of themselves behind, but modern scientists can't read it. Here's a fact you might not know. The Minoans didn't call themselves Minoans. Nobody knows what the real name of their civilization was. The term Minoan came from Sir Arthur Evans, the archaeologist and author who named the culture after the mythical King Minos. The discovery of this new maze adds to the mounting pile of mysteries on the island of Crete. Even though archaeologists say it was used for rituals, they don't really know. They found animal bones, which could be evidence of offerings or ritual feasts. But what they do know for sure is that something weird happened in this palace/maze, and I'm dying to know what it was. How about you? And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time. I want to give a big thank you to Penny Z and Olympus Mons for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Too many ram skulls in this temple. How many mummified ram skulls is too many to discover in an ancient Egyptian temple? Take a look at this picture from the Egyptian Tourism and Antiquities Ministry. You are looking at 2,000 mummified ram skulls. They were discovered at the Temple of Ramses II in Abydos. Even if you're not a big ancient Egypt buff, you've probably heard the name Ramses before. Some call him Ozymandias. After his death, which was mourned by the whole kingdom, he became known as Ramses the Great. You might say he was a pretty popular king. Ramses died in 1213 BC. He ruled over one of the greatest eras in Egyptian history. He brought incredible wealth into the kingdom. He was diplomatic, but also militarily ruthless. He built advanced infrastructure and squashed Egypt's enemies. 1,000 years after his death, he was still popular. There aren't very many rulers who can still claim a shot at fame a millennium after being entombed. Americans still remember Abraham Lincoln, but give it 800 more years and we'll see if he's still a household name. Ramses wasn't just a household name, he was venerated almost as a god. It all has to do with the ram skulls. A team of researchers from New York University were the ones who found the 2,000 mummified ram heads. Excavation leader Sameh Iskander told CBS News that the large number of skulls was surprising, even for them. First, they found a few random pieces of skull, and then they realized they were standing amidst a graveyard of decapitated rams. The skulls were likely votive offerings to Ramses in the afterlife. Only the temple in Abydos was not his burial site. The temple was built during his reign. Yes, he had it dedicated to the god Osiris. But the skulls weren't buried at the temple until way later, 1,000 years later. Archaeologists also found the remains of mummified dogs, goats, cows, gazelles, and mongooses too. It was like a mummified zoo cemetery. They were all buried at the temple during the Ptolemaic period, which stretched from 332 BC to a few months after the death of Cleopatra. Cleopatra died on August 12, 31 BC. Even all those years after Ramses was long gone, people were still leaving immense offerings in his name. I mean, 2,000 ram skulls? That's making a statement. New Nazca lines discovered. Scientists are at a loss for words. More than 300 new glyphs have been found in the Nazca Desert of Peru. Every now and again, another glyph is found amidst the legendary Nazca lines. But now, with the help of artificial intelligence, researchers have found the biggest batch yet. Before digging into the new lines, let's take a look at the old ones. Some of the Nazca lines are nearly 2,500 years old, predating the actual Nazca culture that scientists say created them. They extend across the Nazca Desert in the southern region of Peru for about 190 square miles. There were two major cultures living in the desert. First, there was the Paracas culture, but they were gone by around 200 BC, replaced by the Nazca. Both the Paracas and the Nazca contributed to these strange glyphs, though the Nazca get most of the credit. They lasted for about 800 years in the desert and were making glyphs nearly the entire time. Then the Nazca suddenly vanished into obscurity for unknown reasons around 600 AD. Either that or they were transformed or merged with other Andean civilizations. The truth is, we don't know. People in the modern world didn't know about the mystery lines until the invention of airplanes. Well, a little bit after that. It wasn't until pilots started flying commercial planes over Peru in the 1930s that people realized what was down there on ground level. The Nazca lines are practically invisible when you're standing on them. You can only appreciate the size and scale from above. When you look at the figures, it's easy to understand why. There are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal and plant glyphs. The plant and animal glyphs are known as biomorphs. Some of the straight lines run up to 30 miles without breaking. The biomorphs are often up to 1,200 feet long. That's about the same length as the Empire State Building if it were lying down. American professor Paul Kosok was obsessed with the lines in the 1940s. He believed them to be connected to ancient astronomers. Paul once called the Nazca Desert the largest astronomy book in the world. German researcher Maria Reike was so fascinated by the Nazca lines that she spent her entire life studying them. She even moved into a tiny house next to the desert to be closer to the lines. Maria received a National Geographic grant for her incredible work in Peru in the 1970s. Just like Paul Kosok before her, Maria believed that the lines were astronomical in nature. What do you think the lines were for? What does a 30-mile-long line and the biomorph of a monkey have to do with astronomy? Please share your ideas with me in the comments. Among the 303 new glyphs discovered, archaeologists have identified figures of aliens, killer whales in a knife fight, cats, the robot from Pixar's WALL-E movie, and some camels. These might just be the weirdest glyphs yet. They were identified by a group of researchers at Yamagata University in Japan. Along with some help from the IBM Thomas J. Watson Research Center in New York, they used an AI system to scan the Nazca region. It took almost a century to find the first 300 glyphs. It took the AI less than 6 months to find the newest 303. Isn't technology incredible? Researchers said the new glyphs are mostly invisible to the naked eye. They would never have been found without artificial intelligence. Now it's up to human brains to figure out what these bizarre glyphs are meant to represent. Some of them look like alien humanoids, maybe they're gods, while others seem to be pairs of primates playing with one another. Then there are some that are so bizarre they're not even recognizable. They look like strange human figures with Bart Simpson's spiky hair and too many legs. What do you think they're supposed to be? Let me know in the comments. Neolithic stones even older than Stonehenge. The literary world and the archaeological world collided when a centuries-old secret was unearthed in the garden of a renowned novelist's future home. Neolithic remains even older than Stonehenge have just been discovered in the most unlikely of places. The site dates so far back it feels impossible. Scientists from England's National Heritage Trust say the ancient stonework is from 5,800 BC. I cannot believe the amazing discoveries that have all been made in these last couple weeks. This new find is so exciting that the National Heritage Trust immediately moved to protect it. They are desperate to study the site. And the crazy thing is that it was found in somebody's garden. Not just any somebody either. The large ancient stones were uncovered in the garden of famous novelist and poet Thomas Hardy's former home. Some of his works include Far from the Madding Crowd, The Mayor of Casterbridge, and probably the most famous Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Scientists have known that the house stands on an ancient site since the 1980s. When scientists first excavated more than 40 years ago, they found the remnants of a structure and some ancient pottery. The pottery turned out to be some of the oldest in all of Britain. Recent digs revealed even more. Archaeologists found what they believe to be a circular enclosure, something smaller but still similar to Stonehenge. At 7,800 years old, it predates Stonehenge by 2,700 years. Let me try to put that into perspective for you. The time difference between Stonehenge and the stones in Thomas Hardy's garden is the same as the time difference between today and the construction of the Pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara. Pretty hard to believe, right? The Chinese civilization you've never heard of. A 4,500-year-old axe unearthed in China has unveiled a lost chapter of Neolithic civilization. The axe would be cool by itself, but it's the engraving on it that makes it extra special. Someone carved intricate depictions of tigers onto the axe head. Scientists are calling this discovery a big deal. They think it's going to reveal more information about the cultural heritage of a civilization that not many have heard of before. They are called the Liangzhu. Their civilization flourished along the Yangtze River Delta at around the same time Stonehenge was being built. Some consider the Liangzhu the most sophisticated of all the Neolithic civilizations in the world. Here's why. They emerged 5,300 years ago and immediately started building urban centers. They advanced rapidly in art, architecture, and society. Everything was going very well for the Liangzhu culture until things got a little bit too wet. They established their civilization along the edges of one of the most volatile rivers in China. That river started overflowing around 2300 BC. Their kingdom was flooded so badly that their capital was abandoned and their villages were destroyed. The whole civilization came undone as it was swept away across the floodplains. Archaeologists in Wuxi City recently excavated one of those abandoned Liangzhu sites when they found the decorated axe head. They recovered more than 300 stone tools, along with the arrowheads crafted from bone and artifacts made from jade. There's no getting around it. The craftsmanship of this culture was beyond their day and age. Most stone tools are found without any adornment. From Africa to North America, stone tools are just boring stone tools. In China, their stone tools were covered in symbols. This axe head was engraved with tigers, clouds, and birds. Plus, the axe head was found on a sacrificial platform. Its edge shows that it was clearly used a lot, so it's possible that the axe was involved in rituals. This thing may have seen a lot of action in its day. However, archaeologists haven't said what kind of sacrifices they were, so stay tuned for an update. The whale-mouth dragon. Scientists have found the most frightening flying beast ever. A totally new type of pterosaur had a mouth with almost 500 teeth in it. The really daunting part is that its teeth were hooked. This monstrosity had 480 fishing hooks jammed into its beak, as if flying reptiles couldn't get any scarier. This is the definition of nightmare fuel. The beaks of these prehistoric creatures resembled hair combs and had likely been used to catch small crustaceans. The flying reptiles from the late Jurassic looked scary, but of course they wouldn't have tried to prey on humans. If these things were still around, scientists don't think they would be a threat to you or your dog. Maybe just whatever crustaceans you have in your fish tank. Have you ever wondered how pterosaurs manage to fly despite being giant terror lizards? It's because their bones were incredibly light, allowing them to easily pick themselves off the ground. However, having light bones means that their skeletons didn't fossilize very well. Their bones easily disintegrated instead of being preserved. That's what makes this new discovery so surprising. Scientists found a pterosaur so perfectly preserved that a small part of its wing membrane survived. It's an almost complete skeleton that was found in a chunk of limestone. Professor David Martell from the University of Portsmouth said the creature's long jaw was curved upward and then flared at the end like a spoonbill. All along its jaw were extremely long teeth, each one tipped with a fine hook. Like most prehistoric beasts, this one has a long and difficult name to pronounce. I'm not even going to try it, so here it is on the screen. See, you try to pronounce it or spell it. I mean, I can try, but we might be here all day. This creature was alive 100 million years ago. Its great big toothy grin was likely for its favorite food, shrimp. Martell said the pterosaur would have lived in the shallow wetlands, using its teeth to hold crustaceans in its mouth before it swallowed them down. It feasted sort of like a baleen whale. In fact, the first part of its name translates to whale mouth. The Tomb of the Centipede Kings. An ancient tomb has been found in Guatemala that scientists have connected to a mysterious Maya dynasty. They are known as the Centipede Dynasty. And what I'm about to tell you is shocking. This truly remarkable discovery has shed light on a dark part of the Maya civilization. The first thing to know is that the tomb is old. It is the oldest royal tomb from the Centipede Dynasty ever discovered in Guatemala. The tomb dates to about 300 AD. That was many centuries before the Maya collapse and more than 1,000 years before the Spanish arrived. Archaeologists unearthed this ancient burial place in the lesser-known Maya city of El Peruhuaca. The city was found by accident thanks to some petroleum workers in the 1960s as they sought to exploit Guatemala's natural resources. Scientists didn't start investigating the ruins until 2003, and ever since then the work has been slow. This most recent excavation was aiming to reveal aspects of Maya life, particularly daily activities that scientists may have not known about. Instead, they found a tomb. Professor David Friedel from Washington University was the leader of the research team. He explained that for the Maya, their rulers were divine beings. The Maya believed that their kings carried their divinity into death. Most royal necropolises became sacred sites. Speculation is running wild over whose burial was discovered. The tomb dates to the earliest years of the Centipede Dynasty, so it could belong to King Te-Chan-Ak. The Centipede Dynasty ruled over the city of El Peruwaka. Some archaeologists also refer to them as the Wak Dynasty. It was in their great city that contact between Teotihuacan and the Maya first occurred in 378. This is an ancient event that had huge implications on the world of Mesoamerica. It was like the Egyptians meeting the Greeks for the first time, or the Romans meeting a Chinese civilization. It was such a key event, archaeologists even have a name for it: La Entrada, or the entrance, or the opening. After the meeting, the Centipede Dynasty allied themselves with the ancient city of Tikal. A few years later, they betrayed Tikal and forged a new alliance with the city of Calakmul, which is located in the Mexican jungle and was home of the Khan Dynasty. It was a bad move for the city of El Peruwaka. Tikal crushed them under their military might, and in 743, the Centipede Dynasty was destroyed. Even though the Centipede Dynasty was ruled by backstabbers, they once had a thriving population. Around the time King Te-Chan-Ak ruled, there were tens of thousands of people living in the city. Humans in a prison sewer. A very unusual series of events led to a disturbing discovery inside of a prison sewer. The discovery is 4,500 years old, but the sewer and the jail are new. We're going back to England for this one, to East Yorkshire. During the construction of a new sewer designed to serve a new jail being built at Full Sutton, skeletons were found. Archaeologists identify the skeletons as legitimate human remains from around 2500 BC. That was long before the Romans ever arrived in Britain. I only mention the Romans because during the construction, archaeologists also found parts of a Roman road and a strange burnt mound. They think the road went all the way to the small Roman settlement of Derventio Brigantium, which is near the modern town of Malton. Scientists are now trying to figure out who these human remains belong to. They didn't find any artifacts, only the rough outline of what seems to be a circular grave. The archaeological team said it could be a type of tomb known as a round barrow. Prehistoric people used these circular burials as simplistic but meaningful grave sites. There isn't much more I can tell you for now. If archaeologists make any more grisly discoveries while the new prison is being built, I'll be sure to let you know. The glorious Viking sword. A man and a metal detector stumbled upon an ancient Viking treasure. It was found in the quiet green fields of Gausel, located on the western coast of Norway. He picked it up, looked at it, and shrugged. It looked like it could be old, but the treasure hunter wasn't sure. It was lying in the weeds of a farm, so it could have been anything. That was only part one of the discovery. The metal detectorist hung on to the artifact, and a year later, a friend of his went to the exact same farmer's field. His friend found another treasure, a beautifully decorated sword hilt. This was part two. If what happened next isn't fate, I don't know what is. The piece of metal found by the first guy fit perfectly into the sword hilt found by the second. A year apart, they each found one piece of the same ancient weapon. It's like they found two pieces of a BFF necklace, only 1,000 years old and from the world of the Vikings. Once taken to the local museum, curators were able to piece together the weapon's history. The sword is very rare, one of only 20 examples that have ever been found in Norway. There have been plenty of Viking swords found, more than 3,000, but only 20 of these specific swords, known as D swords. The hilt was elaborately decorated, showing the incredible skill of the Viking artisan who made it. It has gilded elements and shows animal motifs. This was an elite person's weapon, perhaps created for a chief or a high-status warrior. The sad part of this whole situation is that we'll likely never learn who the sword belonged to, or how it ended up lying in the middle of a field. Do you have any theories? Let's hear it in the comments. A hidden civilization in Morocco. A newly discovered Neolithic society in Morocco is reshaping our understanding of early humans. Located near Oued Bet, about 50 miles from Rabat, this site dates back approximately 5,000 years. It's a region that scientists have always known has a deep history. It has a human history going back an estimated 2.58 million years. This particular site, occupied by Neolithic farmers between 3400 and 2900 BC, is believed to be the oldest and largest of its kind outside the Nile Valley. Professor Cyprian Broodbank of the University of Cambridge has long held the theory that its similarities to other Stone Age sites in Spain suggest a possible connection between Mediterranean and African archaeology. While the site was initially uncovered in the 1930s, it wasn't until recent fieldwork that scientists definitively dated it and uncovered the evidence of farming. The existence of similar Neolithic sites on both sides of the Strait of Gibraltar points to a potential cultural exchange, with the original culture possibly coming from Morocco and spreading to Europe. This discovery could rewrite the history of ancient civilizations in the region.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Alabama cave art. Scientists have used a new process called photogrammetry to uncover ancient cave carvings in Alabama. These amazing carvings are invisible to the naked eye, only viewable with the use of this fabulous new technology. Archaeologists had to work together with photographers, spending long hours in the gloomy, dark depths of the cave to map the ceilings underneath northern Alabama. But it was worth the effort. They were able to identify ancient carvings made between 1,000 and 1,800 years ago. The carvings are incredibly odd. The researchers identified 4 strange humanoid figures, each one about 6 feet tall, the size of a point guard in the NBA, and dressed in elaborate indigenous clothing. They also found the carving of a massive coiled rattlesnake with its forked tongue sticking out, along with yet another enormous serpent crawling along the wall, this one over 9 feet tall. For reference, that's the size of Goliath. According to this study, many indigenous people who populated what is now Alabama during that time believed that the caves were paths to the underworld, and the art could have spiritual or ritual significance. This is Alabama's 19th unnamed cave, where artwork was originally discovered back in 1998. But scientists with the Ancient Art Archive and archaeologists from the University of Tennessee wanted to find more and had a hunch there could be carvings invisible to the naked eye. And they were right. These carvings faded over time, so they could only be seen again by creating a 3D model of the cave. What's really cool is that with the success of this latest study, chances are there could be other discoveries in countless other caves across the world. Carvings that were made tens of thousands of years ago could be rediscovered using this new 3D technology. Dolphin taste buds. In one of the most interesting animal discoveries in recent history, scientists have learned something shocking about dolphins. According to marine biologist Jason Bruck from Stephen F. Austin State University, dolphins can actually identify their friends based on taste. That's right. With humans, we recognize our friends in 3 main ways: smiles, voices, and the way they walk. And while biologists have known for many decades that dolphins can form close friendships, they've never known the different ways for the creatures to tell their friends apart. They previously thought these mysterious animals identified their buddies by their unique whistles, but it turns out they actually use their taste buds. Jason and his team of researchers then started observing bottlenose dolphins in the wild. What they found was that dolphins would purposely swim through gigantic clouds of urine. Dolphins leave behind them these kinds of plumes of pee when they need to relieve themselves. And it's the perfect way for identification. Sure, dolphins can tell their friends apart by their whistles, but they can also tell who they're dealing with by tasting their pee as they swim through clouds of urine. You're welcome. Ivan the Terrible sword. A medieval sword was discovered buried underneath a tree in the Novosibirsk region of Russia. According to scholars, this medieval sword may have once belonged to the notorious Tsar, Ivan the Terrible. It's a unique artifact, one that comes from the time of the conquest of Siberia. It probably originated in Germany, then was transported to the Swedish mainland. There it was fixed with an impressive silver handle and Norse runes on the blade. After the sword found its way into the royal armory, then into the hands of Ivan the Terrible. So how in the world did this sword end up buried underneath a tree in the middle of nowhere? Expert archaeologists believe it may have been lost during a battle. Ivan the Terrible, who was the Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1547, then the Tsar until 1584, expanded Russia greatly. He conquered the Khanates of Kazan and pretty much all of Siberia, transforming Russia from a sizable chunk of Eastern Europe into an enormous empire of over 1 billion acres. But because this kind of sword was so rare, only wielded by the most important men in the kingdom, it seems to make sense that it belonged to Ivan. Sadly, we don't actually know for sure. Archaeologists are just speculating based on what little information they have. But it would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Torch ship. 250 years ago, a British ship was lit up off the coast of Rhode Island by colonists. It happened on June 10, 1772. A group of Rhode Islanders, as an act of rebellion, burned down the HMS Gaspee. The arson helped to spark the American Revolution and the Boston Tea Party over 1 year later. Going on for around 2.5 centuries, nobody has ever found the remains of this mysterious torched vessel. However, that's all about to change. Researchers with the Rhode Island Maritime Archaeology Project have accumulated enough funds and will begin searching for the lost Gaspee, hopefully in July 2022. Archaeologists will use the latest sonar technology and scan the waterline, looking for the Gaspee's burnt hull. It will be the first time anyone's seen this ship since before the United States was a country. But just listen to the reason the Gaspee was burned down in the first place. It was sent by the British to Narragansett Bay to enforce trading laws and discourage smugglers from bringing goods to the colonists. But pretty soon, the colonists were sick of the British authorities stopping their ships and disrupting their trade routes. Then, when the Gaspee accidentally ran itself aground in the middle of chasing a suspected smuggler, colonists descended on the boat with torches. They looted the ship, shot the captain, and set the whole thing ablaze. The Sarcosuchus imperator. The Sarcosuchus imperator is by far the largest crocodile that ever lived. It makes any crocodile, alligator, or other crocodilians look like little baby geckos in comparison. The Sarcosuchus is a super croc, whose name is Greek for flesh crocodile. It was a tremendous monster that could grow to its full adult size in about 10 years. Imagine already being 6 feet tall at the age of 10. But the amazing part is that it didn't stop growing and would continue getting bigger and bigger year after year. The biggest Sarcosuchus fossils ever found were of beasts roughly 40 feet from the tip of their nose to the end of their tail. That's about double the size of the biggest saltwater crocodile ever found in modern times. Not only was this prehistoric reptile extremely long, but it was also very heavy. These things weighed probably around 10 tons each, making them serious monsters. And if you're wondering where these extinct behemoths lived, the answer is North Africa. About 100 million years ago, the Sarcosuchus imperator made its home in the tropical region where today lies the Sahara Desert. Before the Sahara was the biggest desert in the world, it was a hot, humid swamp filled with crocodiles, bigger than school buses. And now for number 5, but first want to give a big shout out to Angie Dagcook and SB Meadow 20. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. We'd love to have you. The people of the Pacific. For a very long time, scientists haven't fully understood why people colonize the thousands of islands scattered throughout the South Pacific. There are so many Pacific islands, and each one of them seems to have its very own culture going back thousands of years. But obviously, human beings didn't evolve on these small islands. They must have come from somewhere by way of the sea to populate each miniature tropical paradise. Scientists believe they have figured out what happened. They say that within just 3,000 years, a single ancestral group known as the Lapita covered a third of the surface of the Earth, reaching isolated lands by boat. And as these ancestral people moved, they brought with them a distinct Austronesian language and domesticated pigs, dogs, and chickens. Their domesticated animals would decimate the natural island life everywhere they went. But where in the world did these people start out? Scientists believe the Lapita culture began in the northern Philippines. From there, they crept out into the ocean, populating one island at a time until they spread across all the Pacific about 3,000 years ago. The road to Atlantis. Deep-sea researchers have uncovered what looks like the underwater road to Atlantis. Beneath the waves off the coast of Hawaii, a mysterious cobblestone-like formation has been identified on the sea floor. It looks like an actual cobblestone path stretching across a huge part of the island's marine national monument, one of the biggest marine conservation areas in the world. The path is distinctly yellow. It breaks apart suddenly as if it had been destroyed thousands of years ago, and it doesn't actually have anything to do with Atlantis. Sadly, this is actually just a dried lake bed formation. It's a fractured flow of volcanic rock that formed during an eruption, probably tens of thousands of years ago. The fact that it looks like a yellow brick road is just a really strange coincidence. What looks like cobblestones are most likely just the result of heating and cooling stress, causing cracks and fractures in the sea floor. Still, there is no denying the strange formation looks like a road leading to some underwater mythical city. It's just a shame the road doesn't actually lead anywhere. Ancient warrior's grave. Scientists have discovered the grave of an ancient warrior who was buried wearing golden jewelry with a sword positioned between his legs in Russia. They were astonished at the range of relics found inside the 2,200-year-old necropolis because it had already been invaded by grave robbers. The warrior was buried wearing chainmail with 2 swords, and they also found a pair of bronze helmets. The warrior's grave, found near the town of Mesme in the Caucasus, included a gold brooch that measured just a little over 2 by 2 inches, with a rock crystal mounted in the center. The scientists who found the necropolis discovered over 12 golden artifacts, along with many weapons, including the 2 helmets. A smaller 19-inch sword included a gold plate, leading the team to state, "The actual fact that these articles were used to decorate weapons sets them apart in a category all of their own, which has so far not been recorded anywhere else." An axe that belonged to the warrior, who researchers said was most likely a chief, was also found, along with animal remains, including 3 horses, a cow, and a wild boar skull. A researcher at the Ukrainian National Academy of Sciences Institute of Archaeology said the animals were particularly valuable among barbarian peoples of the ancient world. They also found bones of other animals and pottery in the grave, suggesting that the people held a feast to mark the warrior's death. Grave robbers first found the site in 2004, a year before legitimate excavations began in the necropolis, and officials do not know what may have been taken. The researchers believe the grave was dug between the 3rd century BC and the beginning of the 2nd century AD, but they could not tie the artifacts with any specific culture. Mountains of sugar. Scientists recently discovered that meadows of seagrass on the floor of the ocean actually store massive amounts of sugar inside their fronds. The sugar isn't the white gold you and I are familiar with. Instead, it comes as raw sucrose, and it's released from the seagrass to seep into the soil underneath. What this means is that these vast patches of seagrass are sitting on about 1.3 million tons of sucrose, which is enough to create roughly 32 billion cans of Coca-Cola. To put it even more simply, there are literal mountains of sugar hiding beneath the ocean that nobody ever knew about. According to marine microbiologist Nicole Dubilier, seagrass produces sugar during the process of photosynthesis. Normally, when there are ordinary light conditions, the plants use all these sugars to produce their own growth. But under extremely high light conditions, like in the height of summer, the plants produce too much sugar. They can't store it all, so they release it into the water, and it sinks into the soil where it accumulates. Nobody has any idea right now how to go about harvesting this sugar. And besides, harvesting sugar would mean destroying the mountains of seagrass, which are the most important blue carbon sinks on the planet. To give you an idea of how important these plants are, they suck up about twice as much carbon as a land forest of the same size and dispose of it 35 times as quickly. Even though these grassy underwater plains are hiding a wealth of sugar, trying to harvest it could plunge the world into chaos. Octopus torture. One of the very last things a female octopus will do in her life is lay her eggs. In almost every species of octopus, the mother lays her eggs, stops eating, and does everything in her power to protect her eggs until just before they hatch. Then, the mother octopus goes down a dark path of self-destruction. She will either beat herself to death against a rock, rip her own skin apart with her tentacles, or actually consume herself. It's brutal but entirely natural for the wild animal kingdom. Still, scientists have always wanted to learn why octopuses felt the need to destroy themselves after laying eggs. Some believed their death drew predators away from the soon-to-hatch babies. Others believed it was to protect the babies from themselves, since they are cannibals and have a thing for eating babies. Researchers have discovered a previously unknown chemical process inside the octopus that controls their barbaric self-destruction. After an octopus lays eggs, her body undergoes a unique change. The way her body produces cholesterol changes, which increases her production of steroid hormones. This creates biochemical instability. But here's something that's going to make your jaw drop. Scientists discovered that right before the octopus has its meltdown and starts eating itself, it produces insanely high levels of 7-dehydrocholesterol, also known as 7-DHC. Humans produce this as well, but we don't keep it in our systems because the compound is toxic. We simply need it when making cholesterol. But sometimes an infant is born with a genetic disorder called Smith-Lemli-Opitz syndrome. This is when they can't clear the toxic 7-DHC compound out of their body. And when it builds up in the human body, people develop behavioral issues, grow extra fingers and toes, become intellectually stunted, and self-harm. It's shocking because it shows that the same building block of cholesterol that can cause humans to hurt themselves is what's behind an octopus's self-destruction before her eggs can hatch. We may be worlds apart, but our biology is so similar, it's almost hard to believe. Thanks for watching! Which of these discoveries surprised you the most? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!